Wednesday and doing the YouTube Pagan challenge. So I'm a little bit behind again, so I'm going to catch up. The last 3 weeks, the questions were about ley lines and earth energies, the chakras, and the symbolism of light. So I'm going to start first with the chakras. I think most of us in kind of the witchy, pagan, and new age community are pretty familiar with the chakras, which are the mainly thought of as the 7 main energy centers in the body that run along the spine. There is a correspondence with the colors of the rainbow, although that apparently came along later, I learned. Before that, they didn't quite have that association, or they had, different color associations. But that's okay. If it's helpful to think of it that way, I mean, I certainly think of it that way, and I think it's really helpful. And we also have minor chakras throughout the body. So it's not just the 7 chakras. We also have minor ones in things like our hands and our feet, our eyes, our ears, minor ones throughout the body, and they're connected by meridians of energy. So you have your physical body, but you also have an energetic body as well. And the chakra system comes out of India. The idea of meridians is more, I'm more familiar with the idea from Chinese medicine. But I do think that those ideas are all connected, no matter what culture, how they frame it, whether it's ki or prana or however you want to talk about it. The idea is that our energy body affects our physical body. So if there's problems or blockages within your energy body and they aren't resolved or taken care of, it may eventually show up in your physical body as an illness or some kind of disruption. So that's why it's really important to make sure that you're taking care of your energetic body, just like you would your physical body. So I personally, when I meditate, I do a meditation to kind of open up the chakras, to make sure that they're kind of, I'll feel, which one is more active or which is kind of, feels like it needs more energy, it feels a little low, things like that. And also, of course, protecting myself with white light and all of that kind of stuff to kind of try to keep my energy body somewhat in alignment as much as I can. So that's kind of my thoughts about the chakras. I think well, I know it's originally an Eastern concept and it's kind of been adopted in the West. I think it's a very helpful one, and it's one that really gets you thinking about balancing out the different energies in your life. It's not just about your physical body either. Each of those chakras represents a different aspect, a different type of energy that you may want to work with. So the root chakra is more grounding energy. The sacral chakra is more about sexuality and creativity. For me, I also think it's about femininity as well. And then you have the solar plexus chakra, which is more about your energy, your willpower. What are you putting out into the world? How are you projecting your will? How strong are you? The heart chakra obviously has to do with love and relationships and how much you're loving yourself as well. And then you have the throat chakra about how you communicate. What are you communicating to others? Are you expressing your wisdom? Are you being negative? How are you communicating to the world? Then, of course, there's the third eye chakra, which is your intuition. People, they say open up your third eye, meaning opening up your intuition, being able to listen to that inner voice. And then finally, you have the crown chakra, which is your connection to spirit. So balancing all these things out, because if you're too much on the upper end and you're kind of in the clouds all the time, that's not good. But if you're too much on the bottom end and you're not paying attention to the spiritual, that's not very balanced either. So we have to balance that out. So then this leads me to the idea of ley lines and earth energy centers. I think just like we have a physical body and an energetic body, so does the earth. So the earth has power points, you might want to call them chakras, throughout the globe, throughout the world. Some are bigger than others. I mean, and people tend to build sacred sites on these areas. Ancient peoples, recognized these sites and built sites on them. And I think on a subconscious level, even into medieval and then into more modern times, we still recognize it, because often people will want to build sites like churches on these kind of power points, because people recognize there's something special about that place. So, I mean, very famous ones are obviously Stonehenge. We have the pyramids. There's Machu Picchu. Those are really famous ones, but there's all sorts of ones that aren't famous. And I think in Europe, a lot of them have been very, very well mapped, because people tended to build temples or sacred groves on these sites, and then later people built churches on them. So often people will document these using dowsing rods. They'll find ley lines, which are like the meridians in the Earth's body, the energy currents. And then they'll find these power points, which, like I said, are often, a pretty prominent site. And they'll document these. But here in North America, a lot of them have not been documented because, unfortunately, the first peoples did recognize them, but a lot of that knowledge has been erased. It's been stomped over. It's been, it's just their knowledge wasn't respected, and so it wasn't kept. They didn't write it down because most of it was oral tradition. They passed it on, from parents to children, which is fine. But then when the Westerners came along, we didn't acknowledge their knowledge, and we tried to get rid of it. And so now, unfortunately, that knowledge, a lot of it's been lost. Some of it is still around, which is really good. But I feel like the ley lines and sacred centers, power points in the earth, are not quite as well documented as they are in Europe, and that's too bad. Here where I live, I feel like some prominent energy centers are things like, there's a place called the Forks, which was a meeting place for hundreds, thousands of years for Native Canadians. And, there's been archaeological evidence of people going and meeting there and camping there and for hundreds, thousands of years. And now there's a big market and all sorts of stuff there. It's kind of a tourist spot. But we also have the Human Rights Museum there. And you can tell that it's kind of a power spot, that particular area. There's also an area where there's a monastery that was built. It's now, unfortunately, there was an arsonist that burnt it down in, I think it was the 70s or early 80s. But it again feels like very much like a power spot. So you have to kind of trust your instincts of what feels like a power spot to you. So I find it really fascinating. I don't know a ton about ley lines. I would love to know more. It's funny because in the past couple of weeks, I've seen this topic pop up over and over again. So that might be a little signal that, hey, look into this. This is something you might want to explore. So very fascinating stuff, though, for sure. And some people believe there's also portals at some power spots where you can access other dimensions. All sorts of interesting ideas like that. And finally, the third question for the YouTube Pagan Challenge is the symbolism of light. Light is often associated, especially in the Western mindset, as, darkness bad, light good. And I don't necessarily see it that way, because I see them as more as balancing each other out. I see it more like introverted versus extroverted. Neither are good or bad. They both have different strengths. So to me, darkness, for example, we're going into the dark half of the year. We're approaching here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're approaching the fall equinox, and so there's going to be more hours of dark than light, but that's not necessarily bad. It's time for more introspection. It's a time to look within. It's more about understanding and wisdom and looking within oneself and knowing oneself. That to me is more what darkness is about. Light to me is more about being extroverted. It's about knowing others. It's about knowledge and gaining knowledge and that aha moment. And that's good too. And we need a little bit of both those things in our life. If we're always looking outwardly, and it's also giving and receptivity, right? Like if we're always giving, if we're always extroverted, then we don't have time for ourselves. And knowledge in itself is great, and it's good to have those inspirational moments. But if we don't have the time to reflect and look within, we're never going to really fully integrate them. So I think it's important to have a balance, and I don't see them so much as like good versus bad. I just see it as two different modes of being, and yeah, they're both important. And at different times, you're going to swing more from one to the other, and that's okay. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you all next time. Bye.